Try if I can. I'm very sorry. So
Okay.
can you just say the name of the presentation again?
Yes.
Because we didn't hear that.
Books, toys, and drownings as portals to a fantastic story world in Greek picture books, and how they use the metafictional techniques. According to scholars, metafiction is a tendency that lays bare the construction of a fictional illusion and operates by transcending narrative boundaries. If we accept that metafiction is understood not as a generic category or a subgenre of the novel, but as a tendency within the novel, we can argue, it's the same in picture books, we can argue that metafiction is a strategy of suspending the illusion of fiction through the use of metanarrative science. We can consider metanarrative science as narrative strategies that turn the reader into a participant in the creation of the text. Such strategies disrupt the coherence of the story and emphasize the inherent features of the picture book as a multimodal text. Despite the fact that the first metafictional picture books were published playing with self-referentiality of text and images since 1960, picture books in Greece appear to have been reluctant to embrace such overtness and openness. The first picture books with metafictional elements appeared in Greece in the 19th, when Christos Boulotis wrote the story, The Little Christmas Story That Wrote Itself, and when Eugen Trivizas published the 88 Stuffed Vine Leaves. These texts reconstruct the reality that surrounds them and define their own role within it, either by creating a new literary composition, as in the case of Boulotis, or through active reader participation, as seen in Trivizas' work. From that period, we have encountered very few examples of Greek metafictional picture books. Within this framework, our paper will focus on exploring Greek picture books from the last 2 years. These books use toys, books, and drownings as portals to transitions between story worlds and different levels of book reality, standing out for their interplay between narrative realities. To delve deeper, we will explore how these fantastic worlds disrupt the narrative, pictorial reality, and conventional spatial temporalities through the use of metanarrative science and metafictional techniques. The use of transitional objects that transport characters from one world to another is not a new concept in literature. Objects have been utilized in classic and contemporary novels as well as picture books, enabling characters to embark on fantastic adventures through them or transition into the real narrative world with their assistance. Books, drownings, and toys are among the most frequently encountered objects in literature, as they represent integral elements of childhood. These objects often serve as generators for the initiation or conclusion of a story, guiding characters into and out of fantastic worlds. Books, drownings, and toys serve as the means of traversing narrative levels within the story. Now, let's start with toys and books, which are inseparable companions of childhood, where everything can be transformed into a fantastic and playful world. In 5 Elephants in the Jungle, a child becomes the lord of the jungle. Every day, he calls the 5 colorful elephants and other animals to wake up and commence their adventure. The animals enliven the jungle with their loud voices. They play music, parade, go boating, read, ride bikes, drink lemonade, eat sandwiches, and play football. They have friends like Rina the ballerina and Cain the one-legged soldier. Everyone is having a great time, much like the Lord of the Jungle, until night falls and Mom says, bedtime, but first let's tidy up this jungle. Then everyone finds their place and the story's protagonist sits on his mother's lap to read the story of the elephants who return to the pages of the book. The ending of the story surprises the readers unless they have noticed the pictures in the book. Even from the first page, we see the little protagonist calling the elephants to wake up and watch as they line up and pull the orange elephant out of a green jungle book with their proboscis. The picture's setting is a living room where furniture coexists with the colorful elephants and some plants. Two worlds blend seamlessly, and the viewer is led to perceive the magical scenes as products of the boy's imagination. Similar household objects exist throughout the book's pages, and in some cases, they are enriched with real photographs that coexist with illustrations in a collage. Reality disrupts fiction by breaking the frames, emphasizing that the boundary between reality and fiction is more than just the front and the back covers of a book. At the same time, the materiality of the elephant's images emphasizes the invasion of reality into imagination. Parts of their bodies are composed of book pages, metal pipes, and paper, marking a transgression of boundaries, an example of rhetorical metalepsis occurring in both the verbal and pictorial text. The book itself becomes a portal, and the act of opening it transcends the rhetorical boundaries between story worlds. The elephants find their place in the visually depicted homonymous book, occupying the primary diegetic level and serving as a portal to other narrative levels. Throughout the use of mise en abîme technique, the pictorial text invites the reader to revisit and reconsider the book, searching for hints that reveal the breaking of boundaries. In addition to the elephants that spring to life from the book and join the protagonist's fictional adventure, there are also toys that come to life as depicted in the pictures. They all return to their basket as the fantastic jungle returns to living room reality. Furthermore, alongside the blurring of boundaries between fantasy and reality, another metafictional technique emerges when the ballerina and the lead soldier make reference to Andersen's well-known story. Intertextuality and intervisuality disrupt the conventions of reality and serve as devices that foreground the function of the text as a piece of fiction. A similar intertextual effect occurs when Mimi's the white mouse reads stories. Through the image, we see him holding a book from which mermaids, pirates, and whales emerge, elements that refer to other well-known narratives and fairy tales. Now, let's see drownings as metafictional devices. The situational motif of children feeling lonely and attempting to escape their boring reality is a common theme in children's literature and metafictional picture books. The rooms of the house serve as a backdrop for entry into an embedded narrative story world, offering an escape from the adult's control. In Guy and the Magic Holes, Guy feels lonely in his home where his parents are absent. To make his loneliness pleasant, he paints a hole and goes inside. From there, Guy finds himself in a parallel universe. It is an adventure in the style of all the fictional characters who are looking for adventure that will revitalize their lives and their loneliness. On his peculiar journey, Guy travels to the moon, where he encounters Zan Zan, a young scientist accompanied by his dog. Together, they go to an amusement park where they play, until a voice emanates from a pot announcing that Zan Zan's mother is looking for him and that he should promptly head to the giant spider. Once again, Guy finds himself alone and decides to follow some caterpillars that pass through a crack in a wall dividing the moon into two sides, one for adults and the other for children. Guy meets Dibongo, a tall child from the wild African jungle. Together, they transform into caterpillars and cross into the adult's world to locate Zanzan. Upon finding him, they discover him seated in a cold, dark office surrounded by screens and papers. Guy expresses his desire to return, and Zanzan shares the same sentiment. Together, they begin making drawings and writing numbers on the walls until adults step in and try to stop them. Subsequently, all of them enter the paintings together, initiating a sequence of falling, laughter, dancing, and singing until Guy returns to his room. After a while, his parents return, seemingly happy, but somewhat alienated, as if they were children themselves. Towards the end of the story, the narrator wonders, indirectly addressing the reader, whether Guy's experience was a real or imaginary adventure. In doing so, it becomes evident that the story comprises three levels: the fictive reality within the text, the stage reality consisting of the completely fantastic world created by characters, and the reader's reality. Transitions among these three realities create both a descending metalepsis, wherein a character ventures into an embedded story world, and ascending metalepsis, where fictional characters leap from an embedded story world to a higher hierarchically one, all within the context of metaleptic transgressions. These three levels add complexity to the reading process, and the story might seem quite unusual when reading the text alone. However, reading the pictures alongside the text on the page significantly impacts one's understanding of the story. The illustrations, with their 3D effect, are seamlessly blended with real photographs of the moon, creating the impression that they are tangible and ready to pop out of the book. This connection between the two book realities and the reader's reality is further underscored when Louis Bourgeois' sculpture Maman appears intraiconically within the book, prompting the readers to recall references from their own life. The book's peritext extends into real life through the inclusion of a CD. This CD contains the entire story, presented in a measured style, transcends the physical boundaries of the book, and conveys the narrative to the reader through songs. The interweaving of the three levels of reality becomes even more complex when characters from one fictional world permeate the others in an intervisually suggestive manner. The peculiar characters like the bongo associate with the sculpture of Maman, symbolizing the dynamic and protective personality of a mother woman, Zan Zan with his dog, who is placed in a cold, dark, and unsatisfying reality, reappear at the end of the book through the pictorial depictions of Guy's mother and father. They return home with a toy dog and show noticeable differences, appearing happier than before. Guy's drowning the whole serves as a portal to a secondary fantastic world, which exerts a profound influence on the primary fictive reality. The conventional linearity of place and time, known as chronotop according to Bakhtin, is deconstructed and transformed into a herotopia. The splitting of spatiotemporality is not an uncommon theme in metafictional books. A similar pattern is repeated in the third examined picture book, The Secret Door. In the book, Roxanne, the protagonist, draws a large open door in the midst of landscape. She places her drowning on the wall of her bedroom, and every night she steps through that door to embark on an adventure. These adventures are filled with fear and danger, and Roxanne returns to her bed each time feeling terrified. To confront her fears and prevent the same events from recurring, Roxanne adds a new element to her drowning each time she returns, which she believes will aid her in future adventures. So she draws 3 clouds to ensure a smooth landing the next time she flies with a man on stilts, and a wooden bridge to cross the river following the frog in the brown vest. Every night, Roxanne experiences unique adventures until the last night before her ballet performance, when she has a nightmare about missing the performance. It's the first time the text informs us that all of Roxanne's adventures are merely dreams. To combat her nightmares, Roxanne's mother made her a dream catcher. From that night onward, Roxanne's adventures dwindle and her secret door fades away. All she has left from those days gone by is reading fairy tales. Roxanne's childhood worries and anxiety find expression in her drownings, which serve as a primary means to create a story upon story. These drownings intersect with the secondary world of the narrative, where Roxanne is also the protagonist, allowing her to convey her emotions through her artistic intervention. The presence of ballet shoes, visually hinted at in some of her dreams, even before any mention of her anxiety about the ballet performance, suggests these feelings and foreshadows the underlying cause of her dream creation. Traditionally and timelessly, children's drownings have been a means of interpreting their psyche, representing a distinct level of reality. In this interplay of various story worlds, interventions and boundary breaking, metanarrative signs are manifested primarily through images. The inclusion of real photographs enhances the illustrations, blurring the line between reality and imagination, while also expressing the coexistence of different diegetic worlds. Intervisual and intertextual references are also employed with a wink to the reader, who can identify characters from other narratives through the images. Intervisual, Similarly, other images recall different stories, demonstrating the use of resonance as a meta-narrative strategy. This strategy includes characters or chronotopes recycled from other narratives. The final breaking of the three realities boundaries is revealed at the end of the book. The protagonist, liberated from her nightmares, imparts an obvious didactic and straightforward piece of advice directly addressing the reader's reality. Read many fairy tales to ensure sweet dreams. This didactic approach disrupts the fantasy element, transforming the playful narration into an instructional form. This transformation violates the joy of reading and the metafictional experience, undermining the imaginative aspects of the story. Now, the conclusions. Toys, books, and drawings serve as crucial metafictional devices in children's picture books. They function as portals to fantastical story worlds, enabling the crossing of boundaries between various realities. The role of the reader is to interpret and organize all these meta-narrative signs, thereby crafting a literary universe that is a collaborative creation of both the reader and the novelist. Typically, all these meta-narrative signs and metafictive techniques coexist in combination, as Pantaleos suggests. Books, toys, and drawings often act as the connecting links that bind these elements together. If we acknowledge that metafictional effect is achieved through the utilization of various techniques of this nature, then it becomes evident that the three Greek picture books under examination possesses metafictional features. These books employ narrative and visual strategies that demand active engagement from implied readers, yet they do not pose the risk of alienating readers from the text. Over-diegetic narcissism, characterized by narrative self-consciousness, is nearly absent with Greek authors, appearing hesitant to explore this narrative technique. While most identified a resistance to experimenting with metafictional text in the 90s, we would argue that this reluctance, although it has been overcome in other countries, still persists in Greece when it comes to picture books. It appears that illustrators in Greece are more willing to explore metafictional techniques, as many metafictional elements are evident in the illustrations. This tendency may be explained by the fact that Greek publishing has not actively promoted the reader's conscious involvement in shaping textual meaning, or perhaps it stems from a lack of appreciation for the idea that the ways of telling a story are as important as the story itself. In any case, the initial steps toward the development of Greek metafictional picture books have been taken, and the three books we have examined have contributed to this endeavor by utilizing classic objects such as books, toys, and drawings. Thank you very much.